Hey everybody, this is Heidi from the blog Hands Occupied with a knitting video tutorial for you today. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to fix a twisted stitch in your knitting. So to get started here, let's take a look at this swatch I brought. In here we have these really nice V's of knitting on the right side and purling on the wrong side, known as stockinette stitch. But if you look closely, you'll see that these two stitches here and here are not quite a V shape. They look a little bit more like braids, which can be pretty if the pattern called for twisted stitches, but for the sake of argument and the sake of this video, we're going to say that those are not intentional twisted stitches. It's easy to make this mistake when you're doing your knitting. To create a twisted stitch, you're essentially knitting through the wrong side of the loop. So to tell you what I mean there, we've got this knitting right here, and it's looking all good, all good, all good, until right there where you see that same braid look or twisted stitch. So the way that you end up with a twisted stitch is you're working along in your knitting and you're like, la 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 la, I'm watching TV, I'm having a glass of wine, I'm eating a snack, and I'm not paying attention. And instead of working through the front of the loop like this, you accidentally work through the back of the loop, so the wrong side of the loop for a knit stitch. And working through the wrong side of the loop, you've twisted the loop of the stitch around as it's worked. So that's how you end up with the braided look of a twisted stitch. So again, that can be intentional in a pattern, but for the sake of demonstration in this video, we are going to assume that it was an accident and now we want to fix it. So the easiest way to go back and fix knitting to beginners is to rip back to where you messed up and then start again. But if you're working with a really big piece, like let's say you've got a whole sweater and you accidentally twisted a stitch a couple rows back in a huge piece of knitting, you might not want to rip that far back. It's bad for your hands, it's not particularly fun. So the way to fix this is to slide your work. In this case, this very middle stitch 2 rows down is what I want to untwist. So we're going to slip stitches purlwise from our left needle to our right needle, like so, until we get to that column of stitches where the twisted stitch culprit lives. So then what we do is drop the next stitch off of our left hand needle and pull it out. Be careful, especially if you're working with yarn that's slippery, that you don't pull out more than you intend to. Then we're going to pull out one more stitch till we get to that twisted stitch. So now we've got 2 bands of yarn going between our needles right here, and we're down to the stitch that was twisted. You're going to want to put the stitch on your left hand needle the correct way. So when I say the correct way, I'm saying that you've got your needle right here, pretend my arm is the needle, and pretend that my hand here is the yarn. What you're going to do is you want your yarn to be angled like this. So as you are looking at your knitting, this is your needle, this is your yarn. It should lay this way. So the front of the loop is towards your body and the back is furthest from you. So you want that diagonal from the bottom right to the upper left of your work as you look at it. So to confirm we're doing that, we can see that the loop on our needle right here, the opening is down here and the angle of that stitch is the way we want it to be. That's really important for making sure your stitches untwist. Then what you're going to do is knit that stitch like normal, but instead of having working yarn you're working with, you're going to be working with those 2 pieces of yarn between your needles. So you're going to grab the lower piece of yarn and bring it through. And there, right there, you can see that your stitch is untwisted. It's open at the bottom when you look at it like this. Then you're going to put the loop back on the left-hand needle, having it be that angle that you want it to be, and then knit that next stitch one more time, put the loop back in the correct diagonal orientation on the left needle, and put all your stitches back and admire your newly fixed work. So basically, key points to remember from this video are that twisted stitch look kind of like little braids. They can be intentional, but for the sake of demonstration, we're saying they're not in this case. So these 2 stitches here are what we want to fix. And when you're working with live stitches on your needle, like we demonstrated, you'll need to undo your stitches to the culprit stitch, untwist it, and make sure to re-knit every stitch in that column with your yarn laying at the correct angle. So if you have any tips for fixing twisted stitches, let us know in the comments, and also reach out there if you have any questions. Don't forget to tune in soon for even more knitting video tutorials.